I wanted to publish one more Christmas project video to give you time to make one if you choose. This is another design from Steve Good, and I'll leave a link in the description. There are similarities to the Nativity I made a couple of weeks ago, but there are also significant differences. My first instinct was to grab some oak, but on reflection I decided to go with cherry. Cherry has a beautiful color and grain pattern, making it a good choice for this project. The pattern calls for 3/4 inch thick material, and that's a good choice because you want this to stand on its own without a base. I cut some 4/4 cherry down to about 6 inches wide and 10.5 inches long. I drilled 4 pilot holes at the drill press, and I believe they were 5/32 in diameter. The hole needs to be small enough to fit inside the accent mark on one side of the manger. After giving the matter some thought, I decided to use a number 5 Pegas Modified geometry blade for the interior cuts because there are some very tiny details. The exterior cut is straightforward, so I plan on using a number 7 blade for that one. Cherry is relatively soft, but it does have a tendency to burn, so I'll be watching and careful to prevent that from happening. A sharp blade and the correct speed go a long way toward avoiding burning. I'll start with the most challenging cut, the one on the right side of the manger. Some impossibly tight turns represent hay spilling out from the manger. Rather than trying to cut all those tooth-shaped patterns by following the line exactly in sequence, I made a cut, backed up a bit, and then made the next cut parallel to the first. After making those cuts, I returned to make the second set of cuts that completed the sawtooth pattern. On a complicated pattern like this, if you're a little off, it's unlikely to be noticed. Once you remove the pattern, only you will know where you strayed from the line. The important thing is to capture the overall impression of the cut in relation to the look of the entire pattern. The next interior cut creates the space below the manger. It's relatively easy, but the corners are sharp, so cutting them requires a bit of skill and care. The way I do corners is to cut right up to the point where the cutting direction changes. When I arrive there, I ease off the pressure on the blade and, with the blade still running, pivot the workpiece to the new direction I want to cut. The curve just created, plus maybe a tiny bit of the waist area, allows me to move the wood around. When I see the board is aligned, I start cutting again and repeat this procedure every time I reach a corner. The little area in between Joseph and his staff is the next cut. From the pilot hole, I cut along one of the lines to the top. The horizontal line was short, but I handled the corners just like I did those underneath the manger. Then I followed one of the long vertical lines until it ended at the staff's bottom. I didn't even think about trying to make that turn to follow the other line back up to the top of the space. Instead, I backed the blade up in the curve just created, ending in the open space near the top of the cut, and then I followed the line down the other side until I reached the point at the bottom again. This left me with gently tapering sides and a very sharp point. This brings us to the large remaining interior cut. I started with the part that had some detail, which would require a bit of attention. I wanted to complete this before I moved on to the easy curves around the perimeter. These first few cuts provide the detail for some hay spilling off the left side of the manger. Unlike this similar detail on the right side, however, there's a lot of maneuvering room here in the waist area. I nibbled away at the sawtooth shape here much more easily than I was able to do on the other side. Once these details were cut, I moved over to the mostly easy portion of this long cut line. Mary's outline was merely a matter of taking my time and letting the blade do the work, but after cutting her back, the cut line came to a point before abruptly reversing direction. I know from experience that trying to move the workpiece to the angle required to change the cutting direction here would be too difficult. There is an easier way. I cut to the point where the line changes direction, then I backed the blade a short distance into the newly created curve. I moved far enough back to maneuver the blade into the waist area and turned the workpiece 180 degrees. Then I backed the blade, dull side first, to the point where it stopped cutting. Now only a slight turn was needed to align the board with the direction I needed to cut next. I made that turn and started cutting up along the curved vertical line. This challenge was followed by a pleasant journey along a gentle curve until I came to a sharp turn on the right side of the Nativity, a mirror image of the one encountered previously. I used the same technique to complete this change of direction. There was nothing more to comment on for the remainder of the long inside cut until I came to the end. 2 90-degree turns at the bottom of the major's legs required some skill to cut, but I already described how to make cuts like this, so there's no need to explain how to do them again. Now that the interior cuts are completed, I switched to a number 7 Pegas Modified geometry blade to make the exterior cuts. There are no complicated areas here, and the number 7 blade will cut faster. Since I'm running a business, I need to use my time as efficiently as possible. If you're making this nativity for personal use, you can choose to switch to a number 7, or you can continue with a number 5. It took me about 9 minutes to complete this cut with a number 7 blade. The top of the J, and later the Y, has rounded edges rather than sharp 90-degree corners. That makes cutting them easier and faster. When you reach the bottom right side of the J, there's a pointed intersection where the letter meets the base. I've already shown how to back into the intersection to make that sharp point at the direction change, so I won't go into a detailed description of how to do it again. There are 2 more of this type of direction change, so by the time you finish this project, you should be confident using that technique. The arch of the O over the nativity is a gently flowing curve, and the right side of the project's exterior cut doesn't introduce anything needing explanation. Here's a quick look at the project after cutting is done. This will need a bit of sanding on the back, and I'll use a handheld sheet of 150 grit sandpaper to soften the edges a bit. Then I'll head to the finishing room to give this a couple of coats of Minwax warm satin spray polyurethane. That will bring out the color and grain pattern and preserve this project for many years of holiday display. We interrupt this program for breaking news. Police say a petite psychic escaped from custody last night. They're now looking for a small medium at large. Last night, a local man was hit by a violin, then a clarinet, and then a French horn. Police say it was an orchestrated attack. Okay, sorry, but I heard those jokes a day or two ago and I couldn't get them out of my mind. Since I was trained as an announcer a long time ago, I thought I'd use the news format as a way to retell them. I'm very pleased with the way this project turned out. That cherry has a beautiful color and grain pattern. It's about double the price of oak, but I think I should work with it more often. What do you think? I'd love to read your comments and I'll reply to each of them. This will be my last holiday project for the year, but I have several new things in progress. Until next time, suggestions for what to watch next are on the screen.